Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, October 30th, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I am very happy to be joined by Brandon Castell. He is our newest Bucknuts staff member. He writes the wildly popular column Inside the Brain of BCast. Brandon, welcome into the show this morning.
Hey, Dave. Good morning. Good to be on with you guys and all the folks at Bucknuts.
First topic here, JT Barrett got some things off his chest on Wednesday after practice. I haven't talked to you since then. Just your reaction. It was like he, just didn't like the narrative that he couldn't throw the deep ball, and he had been waiting a while to get it off his chest. He wasn't like yelling and screaming. Your thoughts on JT getting that off his chest?
Hey, I thought it was a pretty legit conversation. I can understand where the kid's coming from. I think if he was less mature than he is and less of a leader than he is, it would have come across a lot different, and I think it may have, made some headlines. Obviously, the weenie arm comment, I think, has made a few headlines, but not necessarily as in a bad way, just kind of a kid expressing himself over what's been a pretty big criticism of him, saying that, hey, the offense didn't necessarily change because Cardale Jones came in last year, that he had been throwing the deep ball all year, and that he's capable of throwing the deep ball, and that when you have a guy like Devin Smith, you want to throw the deep ball. Now, I tend to disagree with Barrett a little bit. I get where he's coming from. I don't think that Ohio State's afraid to call a deep ball pass with JT Barrett in there. But if you go back to last year, certainly Devin Smith had a connection with Cardale and his ability to throw the ball a country mile. And I think that definitely helped Devin's ability to just go up and get it, just run as hard and fast as he could and know the ball was going to be there. So I see what Barrett's saying. He's not just a dink and dunk quarterback, and I think that's what some people were pegging him as and why he wanted to get that off his chest. But clearly throwing that 70-yard ball is not quite in the same wheelhouse for him as it is for Cardale.
And in fairness, he did admit, my arm's not as strong as Cardale's, but he just didn't like the idea that the narrative that all of his yards were on zone read runs and short passes. So I agree with you. I mean, there's no way you wouldn't compare those two guys when it comes to arm strength. But JT showed in that Michigan State game last year that he can throw that deep ball. But I think he hit the nail on the head. It was kind of funny. The weenie comment that was funny. If you can't laugh at that was funny right there. We're doing the scrum, as you're familiar with. When he said that, I didn't even know what he said. I'm like, what did he say? I'm like, looking around, what did he say? I had to play it back to hear what he said there. But, that was out of character for him, but I liked it, BCast.
The one thing about JT, though, I'll say this, and that is, and he's a funny kid sometimes, and I like when kids express themselves a little bit as long as it doesn't hurt the team, So, but, the one thing about JT is he may not have the same arm strength as Cardale, but his ability to be accurate down the field, that was something we did not see from Cardale this year, and I think it's why they went away from the deep ball. And you say, the guy can throw it 75 yards, but Ohio State really didn't feature the deep ball much this year with Cardale. One of them is they didn't have Devin Smith, one reason, but another reason I think is just you got to be accurate still throwing the ball down the field. And you've got a guy like Devin who can just run underneath it and catch it. It takes a little bit of that pressure off, but I think JT may not have quite the arm strength, but his ability to put it where it needs to be, I think is what separates him.
8 games into the season, even if they go to the national championship game, we're more than halfway through the season, the 15-game slate. Hopefully it will be a 15-game slate for Ohio State's perspective. Only 4 true freshmen have played, and I didn't think a lot of true freshmen were going to play this year, but this really surprises me. Only 4 have played thus far. Who are some true freshmen, BCast, that you are surprised have not seen the field this year?
Well, I mean, I think, it is kind of surprising, and then in some respects it's not when you consider all the talent they had coming back, when you consider the fact, a lot of their veterans on defense were back. Obviously, they lost a few key guys in Duran Grant and Curtis Grant and Michael Bennett, but, a lot of their guys were back, and they had a lot of guys who weren't true freshmen waiting to play, guys like Tyquan Lewis and Garyon Conley and Sam Hubbard. So you had guys that were ready to play. Urban Meyer's done a great job of loading up and loading up across the board. And so you didn't have that need of saying, man, we got to get these guys in there and hope they're ready to play as freshmen because we don't have enough guys. I'm obviously the two big ones I think from the beginning of the year were Torrance Gibson and Mike Weber, two guys that people thought would come in and play. Both guys have dealt with injuries, so I'm not completely surprised. And when you've got a guy like Zeke and you're trying to get some other guys the ball and get the ball to Curtis Samuel and do some other things, I don't think you're going to rush Mike Weber back from any kind of injury. And then everybody's, I think, kind of heard the story of Torrance Gibson and battling some injuries, battling some immaturity. So I'm not entirely surprised with that. I'm a little surprised that with the injuries at wide receiver, we haven't seen KJ Hill. I thought we would have seen him by now, especially I think I was on a few weeks ago with you and we were talking about whether KJ Hill was going to play, and Urban Meyers talked about him being a guy that was kind of the next man up to play. So I'm surprised they haven't gotten him in there a little bit just to see what he can do when you lost Noah Brown and you lost Ferris Campbell and you lost Corey Smith. So he's, to me, the most surprising one. And then maybe I look at some of the young linemen. I thought maybe a guy like Matt Burrell would have got in at some point. Just didn't know for sure if they wanted to get that experience or preserve that red shirt. The line's been pretty healthy, so obviously that's been good when you think about someone like a team like Michigan State that's had to reshuffle their line all year. So I think that's been big. And then I guess the last guys would be, I think, some of those guys in the front seven. Obviously, we saw Jerome Baker come in recently and play some special teams. First time we've gotten a look at him. But, I thought we might see a couple of those guys earlier in the year, whether, Nick Connor obviously had that injury. Jay-Sean Cornell is another guy I thought, we might see a little bit of. But they're pretty good at defensive end when you've got Jalen Holmes and Hubbard and Tyquan Lewis. So not a lot of places for these guys to jump in and get reps right now. And then I think we talked about it a while back as well, which is these last couple games was really the first time they put enough distance between themselves and their opponent to say maybe we roll some guys out there and see what they can do. So not entirely surprised considering the way the season's unfolded and the roster that they have.
Yeah, it bodes well for the future. They're able to redshirt all these guys. Now, who knows if some of these guys will be here for 5 years. I look at a guy like Justin Hilliard. If he's really that good, will he really be here for 5 years? He was the highest-rated member of the class. I didn't think he was going to play much at linebacker, as you've mentioned. I mean, they're just stacked at so many positions. Linebacker's a great example. Even a guy like Dante Booker can barely get on the field. It took Jerome Baker halfway through the season to see some action. So Justin Hilliard is one minor surprise for me. I just thought he'd play from day one on special teams. For the listeners that are wondering, and BCast touched on this a little bit, the four true freshmen that have played are Denzel Ward, Eric Glover-Williams, Isaiah Prince, and Jerome Baker. Those are the only four. And Baker recently switched his number from number 4 to number 17, so you might have even missed that. I missed that the first time. I saw 17 out there, just figured it was Jalen Marshall. So Jerome Baker switched from number 4 to number 17. So those are your four: Ward, Glover-Williams, Prince, and Baker. And unless there's injuries, I think they're just going to stick with those four. All right, moving to a different topic here. Now, the coaches cannot look past games. We can look past games. The players are not allowed to look ahead, but we can as media guys. Not to overlook Minnesota and Illinois. Okay, to overlook Minnesota and Illinois. Let's focus on Michigan State and Michigan. BCast, as you look ahead to those two games to finish the regular season, are you more concerned about Michigan State or are you more concerned about at Michigan?
That's a great question, and I do think the Minnesota game will be a pretty emotional game, night game in Columbus. With Jerry Kill stepping down, and so not that I think that they're in danger of losing that game if they show up and play, but I do think there will be some emotions attached to that game. Illinois, always a sleepy game when you go to Champaign. That'll really be about Ohio State. Can they get up and be excited for that game on the road against a team that's not very good, knowing they've got those two big games coming up the next 2 weeks after that. So I agree with you. You can kind of look past them, but I could see them struggling a little bit in one of these games just based on the circumstances. Looking at Michigan State, very interesting because both these teams present different problems. They both have effective defenses, although, it's crazy to think that Michigan's defense is probably a little more dangerous right now, or at least seems to be a little more dangerous. And to me, that's the game that really scares me. I mean, Michigan State is the game that they've been gearing up for, since a year ago. They've known, these Ohio State players have known basically since they got to Ohio State that Michigan State was the team they had to beat with Mark D'Antonio and the roster they put together up there. Connor Cook presents a lot of problems because he's a senior, he's a veteran, or he's a leader. He's a guy who has been there and has played against this team and has been in the fire. But, I look at that last game of the year, and Michigan has not been relevant in a while. This game has not been evenly matched in a long time. And I'm not saying that Michigan has the same amount of talent, because I don't think that they do. And I certainly don't think Jake Rudock is on the same level as J.T. Barrett or Connor Cook. But going on the road, if they're undefeated, Michigan has a chance to ruin their entire season, and a legitimate chance for the first time in a long time. To me, that's the game that I would circle and say that's the most intriguing and most dangerous game for me the rest of the way.
I could not agree more. I mean, it's difficult for Ohio State no matter the circumstances when they go to Ann Arbor, as we both know, and this with Jim Harbaugh, his first year, and they know they can make their season if they beat Ohio State, and nothing against Michigan State, because I could not be more impressed with Connor Cook and how well they've played. They've withstood a lot of injuries, a lot of respect for Mark D'Antonio, but I just think the game at Michigan will be even tougher. Both games will be tough, but I agree with you. Going to Ann Arbor is never easy. And we'll forever use the 2013 example. That Michigan team had no business being on the same field with Ohio State, and it took a Tyvis Powell interception on a two-point conversion to save the victory for the Buckeyes. All right, final topic here. Some news broke yesterday. 6 minor football violations that Ohio State self-reported to the NCAA BCAS. So I'll just go right down the list here. These all happened from, it said February 1st to September 10th, but one of the items in here doesn't fit with that timeline. I'll get to that in a minute. All right, the first incident was Braxton Postagram on Instagram, some Advocare products. Basically, he looked like he was advertising for Advocare, and that's a violation. They self-reported that. Cardale Jones attended Joe Hayden's celebrity softball tournament in June. A walk-on that was not supposed to travel to the Sugar Bowl traveled to the Sugar Bowl. So that's what I was referring to. That happened before February 1st, obviously. Maybe they just meant this is when they self-reported it was between February 1st to September 10th. But they said in the report, it said these incidents happened between those dates. Obviously, the Sugar Bowl happened on January 1st, not February 1st. But a walk-on that was not supposed to travel to the Sugar Bowl traveled to the Sugar Bowl. The fourth one was an impermissible phone call from Urban Meyer to a recruit. The fifth one, and this is the most minor of the minor, Kerry Combs posted a picture to Twitter of him and some high school coaches in front of the national championship trophy. Oh, I can't believe he didn't get thrown in jail for that. He should be in prison right now.
Sanctions. Sanctions right there.
There you go. They're going to shut down the program. And then the sixth one is a current player tweeting about a 2016 recruit. I want to know who this is, by the way. I want to know who the current player and who the recruit is. I want to know who both of them are, but that's the sixth and final one. Current player tweeting about a 2016 recruit. BCast, you've seen a lot of this stuff during your time. Anything to worry about here? Do you laugh at any of this? Just your thoughts on these 6 violations.
No, I mean, it's always funny when you see the self-reported minor ones. It's always stuff like this. And, Urban Meyer made a phone call, and it was after a certain hour, and, that kind of stuff. And I think if you see it popping up, every couple months, or there, you go down the list and there's 20 examples of a coach making an impermissible call, then I think you start to say, hey, what are we doing here? Things like the walk-on traveling to the Sugar Bowl, you're not going to, again, it's something that you gotta play within the bounds of what they've given you from the rule standpoint. But really, the only one on the entire list that I would have been worried about if it was the first time we had heard about it would have been that first one, that Braxton Miller with the Advocare product. If this was the first time we had heard about that, I'd be interested to see, if the NCAA was going to look into that at all, just because, he is I guess what we would want to call an amateur student athlete, and he's not allowed to promote supplements and get paid for his name and face. He can't even get paid for his name and face as a football player in his jersey, let alone, working or advertising for someone else. So we all knew about that. Everyone who reads Bucknuts and is following the program had heard about that back when it first came out, and I don't obviously see that being an issue at all now at this point. But if it was the first time we were hearing about it, that's the only one on the list that would jump out to me that I'd say, hey, let's wait and see if anything comes of this. But the rest of them, I don't see anything there. Cardale Jones participating in a celebrity softball game. To me, I think we're really splitting hairs now if we're going to say that the Ohio State starting quarterback isn't enough of a celebrity to play in a celebrity softball game. Unless he's getting paid to do it, I don't see why that's an issue. But I know the NCAA has their strange rules, and they're going to keep that tight to their chest. But the rest of the ones on this list, I kind of make me laugh a little bit.
Great stuff, as always, out of BCast. I appreciate it, Brandon, and I appreciate the listeners out there. Thank you very much for tuning into the show. I hope you have a great day and a great Halloween weekend. Take it away, best damn band in the land.